I have good news for you and I have bad news for you. Just to explain a bit, why am I here, you might ask? I'm very passionate about the idea of developing Portugal in a new direction. So in 1974, Portugal and Singapore had a GDP per capita of around $2,000. Now, Portugal is obviously twice the population of Singapore. If you look today, we have a GDP per capita of around 20,000. That's good. A lot of improvement, but we are still the poorest country in Western Europe. And if we look at Singapore, it's not 20,000, it's 60,000. And so somewhere in this, there is an opportunity. And I think the opportunity is around sustainability. What we're seeing with the COVID pandemic over the last 2 years is these changes that have taken place in day-to-day life. So demand patterns have changed. If we think about the way that we buy things, what we do, that has all changed and is still changing. We have moving into reshoring supply chains. People are no longer happy having stuff made in China. Look at the problems there. Similarly, we've got this problem of a catastrophe in the energy market. But what it means is that we are going to fast forward what we're doing. At the moment, the target is 40% renewables and then 100% in 2030 and 140% in 2040, because you need more for the period ahead. And the great thing about renewables, and this is part of the opportunity for the Portuguese economy, is that you have free electricity. It's free because you've already paid for the units. There's no cost of digging it out or anything else. But first, the bad news, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. None of this is a surprise, but we essentially have a war and we are threatened with nuclear warfare. We've had the plague, obviously, we know all about that, but we still have a supply chain crisis because, of course, China will not accept vaccines that aren't made in China. That would be a loss of face. So that means something like 200 million people are still being locked down in China today. So all of those goods that should have been coming from China won't. Famine. Because of the gas price and the gas shortages, gas is absolutely critical for making ammonia, which is critical for fertilizer. And half of the world's population, 4 billion people, depend on nitrogen fertilizer for their food. And then, of course, we have the problem of inflation. Do we want to stay in this environment or do we want to move forward? We have the ability, I think, because of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, 1.6 trillion euros, to do something, quite special. We could really make a change. I want to talk to you for a second about electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, because as you will all know, we're in a world here in Europe where a massive change is taking place in the car market. And this matters because the raw material for making plastics comes from refineries. About 5% is naphtha. The rest is gasoline and diesel. And the diesel market, as you can see, very quickly is disappearing from 50% and it's now down around 20%. Gasoline is also, as you can see, going down. And what we're seeing is a dramatic rise in battery and plug-in electric vehicles, as well as hybrids. This is where Putin has helped, because the International Energy Agency and others have all said we now have to prioritize move to electric vehicles because cars are 25% of all oil demand. So if you want to stop using fossil fuels, you have to stop using petrol and diesel. You also have to stop using virgin plastic. You have to go back to recycling. And you can see that we are moving up the S-curve there really very fast. We've got now global brands totally committed to the idea of moving to recycled plastic. In the summer, Pepsi said the pressure from the consumer to move to recycled plastic outweighs the demand for green on Sprite, which we've had for 60 years, and we are going to change the colour so that it can be recycled. At the end of this month, Brussels is probably going to produce its draft of a new directive on waste packaging, and it will say, I'm pretty sure, that we have to move to 55% use of recycled plastic in packaging by 2030. And also, it won't just be a directive, which member states ignore, it will be a regulation. And if they don't do it, they will be fined. We know what? We know in this area, chemical recycling is absolutely critical. Mechanical recycling is fine when you can do it, but it is very limited in its use. But the question is, how do we do it? And the point is, we have all these people who at the moment don't talk to each other. I come from the chemical industry, would normally talk to converters, and yes, it would talk to its customers, the brand owners and the original equipment makers. But it wouldn't talk to our friends at Liepel. That's not our value chain. Wouldn't talk to the cities about what happens to it. Wouldn't talk to the waste managers about this. So we have to start by having a dialogue. This is where I think INSURE can really make a difference, because somebody has to do this for the first time, and the person who does this can do it as a pilot for the EU 27. I've already talked to people like the European Investment Bank and so on. We could get public money from the Recovery and Resilience Fund in order to fund this kind of project, in order to do things differently. The Commission has funded a program called Digital Watermarks, and this has been led by P&G with 300 brand owners and retailers. Because the big problem is most plastic is not a single layer plastic, and that's where this very smart digital watermarks, every single piece of plastic will have a digital watermark on it. And so individual plastics can be marked and then sorted. What I'm saying is we've got this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take a lead in a major new market opportunity. Even if the plastics companies don't want to understand, and actually I think now most of them do, they aren't going to have the naphtha from the refineries to make virgin plastic in the future because of electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles coming through. So we either continue with plastic as being recycled plastic, which for the climate and CO2 is far better than glass or metal or paper or anything else. But we must get this pilot program underway. It all comes down to collaboration. And I just hope that we could do that here. Thank you very much.